Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Live Since You Asked. It's nice to be back and be a part of this again after 2 weeks of being on the road with diploma delivery. We're real fortunate to have with us today Taidgh McClory of the class of 1993. Taidgh, welcome. Thanks for your time this afternoon.
No, my pleasure. I mean, thank you for the invitation. Certainly humbled to be asked. Thank you.
We've had a lot of great conversations with a lot of prep alums, and I'm sure this one will be just as great as all the others. So no pressure whatsoever.
Okay.
We've got a couple questions that we've prepared for you, Taidgh, and then for everyone who's listening out there, feel free to use the questions feature as a way to submit your questions. If you're on a laptop or desktop, you can just touch the questions tab and submit it. If you're on an iPad or a smartphone, just tap the question mark on your screen. And we hope you all appreciate our Live Since You Asked summer mode as I broadcast from my backyard and Taidgh broadcast from kind of the porch at his house. It's nice to be outside for a little bit and moving towards some summer weather. Taidgh, you've done a lot of work in the world of real estate development, and now you're doing kind of a social impact entrepreneur out on your own. Can you share with us a little bit about your background and about what you do for work today?
Yeah, certainly. So my background really starts in Lynn, Mass. So I grew up in Lynn. Fortunate to attend St. John's Prep, class of '93, and then from there went to Dartmouth and focused on history and studio art. So came out of Dartmouth with a history and art major. So that obviously that equates to real estate, right? But post Dartmouth, I cut my teeth in the advertising and marketing world. So that's where I started my career. And in 2002 and 3, that's when I pivoted to commercial real estate. I spent the bulk of my career in the commercial real estate space. And actually, up until last year, I'd worked with one company. I worked for CBRE, global commercial real estate firm, Fortune 200. I worked in the New England partnership. And so the first 5 years of my career started in brokerage. And then became a partner. The next 5 years, I led our marketing and research team. And the balance of my career was in sales management. But what brought me to today and what I'm trying to build over the last year is a social impact enterprise that's really dedicated, still grounded in commercial real estate, but the focus is the intersectionality between diversity and inclusion and equity. Diversity is really in my DNA. I'm a biracial Black and white man, and it's always been part of my identity. And it's always been part of my professional career. And it really unfolded, during my time at CBRE, and really has forced me to pivot and realign my work to be more central and aligned with my core ethos. And so, what my practice is really trying to do is first acknowledging that there's certainly an imbalance of opportunity, an imbalance of financial opportunity and access when it comes to people of color and women in commercial real estate. And it's over the course of my career in the corporate side, I found myself spending a lot of time, a lot of civic energy in endeavors related to this, but they weren't my day job. It wasn't what I was paid to do. And I think through a lot of self-reflection, through a lot of events that really opened my eyes to what was important to me, particularly in this season of my life, I made a decision, last year to pivot, still keep and focus on commercial real estate, but try to help the industry work through solutions, design strategies that can bring more diversity, more inclusion, and more equity to the entire commercial real estate process. And so today, just to give you kind of two quick examples, I wear two hats. So I work in-house for Millennium Partners. They're a national commercial real estate developer, really an urban mixed-use developer. And 2 years ago, they planted a flag in the ground and really made a commitment to equity and inclusion with respect to real estate, and trying to impact not just workforce and jobs, but also financial access and investment. And so in my role there, I'm really helping them execute a plan related to capital raising from communities of color to participate in the capital stack of development, but also help them with strategies related to workforce. So how do we build a pipeline of more professionals of color from construction to professional services, and also education and mentoring. And so that role I've been doing for just over 6 months, and really has helped guide what I'm building today. So outside of that role, I wear a hat with my new social impact enterprise, helping another global commercial real estate firm implement DE&I efforts with respect to development. So very, very fortunate and grateful, especially during these times, to have a privilege of working from home and trying to make an impact.
Sure. Taidgh, one of our viewers, kind of put a question in that I was going to ask you later on, but just kind of built on what you shared, just to kind of put this out to you, as you look at that transition from the work that you did with CBRE to kind of setting out on your own, and that discernment process, for lack of a better term, was there a tipping point that made you realize, it's time to go in this direction? Or was it more of a gradual kind of process as you think back on kind of how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, no, there is certainly a tipping point, and I think it certainly was building. I would call it a tipping point that was building over time, and in an event that really opened my eyes to what was important. So over a year ago, I lost a dear friend of mine, Tim Goldberg, fellow St. John's Prep classmate, and losing Tim, in the season of my life that I was in, it really helped, open my eyes to really what was important. It really made me ask the question of, if any day could be my last day on the planet, what am I doing to make an impact? What am I doing that is dedicating my time and my energy to really efforts that I care about, that will not only benefit my family but many families. And so I grateful to have a friend like Tim. Obviously, it certainly is a hole, right, in our prep family, losing Tim. But that certainly was one point. I think it really shed light that things that I was feeling misaligned, maybe if I am true to myself of what I was doing, the balance of my career at CBRE, while I was achieving, it wasn't 100% fulfilling. And so that's really what I'm really charting towards now, is how can I build a life's work that is more fulfilling going forward.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure it still continues to be painful today with the loss of Tim. And one of the people that's tuned in was asking if that's a TSG hat in the background, and noted that Tim was his neighbor. So there's others that missed Tim on board as well.
Absolutely, that's fantastic.
Taidgh, one of the things that we talk about a lot and have really continued to build on at St. John's is about the need to be resilient. You've talked a little bit about that kind of with the loss of Tim. My assumption is, in advancing the world of diversity and inclusivity, there are some challenges, and there have been some setbacks. Can you talk about setbacks or obstacles that you've had to overcome in your career, and what you learned from that experience, and how it's helped to set you up today?
Yeah, I mean, no question. I mean, certainly there's been a lot of bumps along the way. But I think there are key setbacks, and even failures, frankly, that have helped me grow. And one really came before I came to St. John's. It really was, I think, a driving factor that led me to St. John's. I failed history in 7th grade, and it was an eye opener. And my mother made sure that I understood, the severity of that failure. And it was not due to lack of knowledge. It was just a lack of effort, lack of turning in a paper on time. But that failure focused me. I think that's what failures and setbacks do sometimes. They open your eyes and they refocus you 100% on a goal and a target. And my 8th grade, academic career, was 100% focused on that goal of not failing. And that led me, it really gave me the drive and the resolve to find my way to St. John's. And I'm so grateful that I made it there, because I think if not for St. John's, Dartmouth definitely does not, factor as an option for me. And if not for Dartmouth, is where I met my wife, and now I have three great kids, and I'm very fortunate to where we live. I think the other setback and obstacle that really led me to commercial real estate was in 2001 when I lost my job. And really, part of it was economy. Part of it was also just being over my skis. I had built a career in advertising, was recruited away from a firm, and gotten into a situation where I wasn't asking the right questions. And without really being curious and focused on being okay, not knowing, it really led me to really pivot my career. And I'm grateful. It was hard during that time when that happened, but it led me to commercial real estate, which I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to really build a career in an industry that is very, what I learned is very much the same. There's a lot of white male commercial real estate professionals, and that's really what's driven my work and is driving my work today. So how do we open the door so that I'm not one of the few that is able to benefit and progress?
Sure. I can understand failing math, but as a former history teacher, I have some real problems with that one. So,
well, as a history major, it turned me into a great, history student, thanks to Mr. Nance.
There you go. He's a good man. He was a really good man. Referencing St. John's and thinking about your experience there today, aside from kind of the access to Dartmouth, how did St. John's set you up to, and what do you take with you from your prep experience and carry with you in the midst of doing the work that you're doing today and the work that you've done in the past?
That's an easy question. It has created a foundation of relationships that are priceless. I have a core group of friends that will be there forever. And I think that's the magic of St. John's Prep in terms of building relationships that are real, building relationships that are there to help you when you fall, but also to celebrate together when you succeed. And I think when I think about what those relationships have meant to me throughout the years, they've been critical. And really, it's that network that we talk about is really a net when you fall, right? And it can slingshot you forward to newer heights. And I think that's probably one of the biggest benefits that I am so grateful for from the St. John's Prep community.
It's awesome to hear that the stories that our current students talk about of a sense of brotherhood continue, even today when you've been out since 1993. One of our guests or viewers, who's I believe a current parent, is asking, as you look at the work that you're doing today and trying to bring the world of diversity and inclusion into the real estate world, can you share some examples of how you have done this work or how you've been successful in this work?
Yeah, I would say that it is, so part of the work is on the pipeline, right? So how do we build a better pipeline and pipeline partners to kind of build up the front end, right? In order to one goal is really to change the complexion of the industry, to make sure that this is not an opaque industry or a mystery of, what is commercial real estate and how do I get in? And it's been an industry that has really been reactive to the way that it recruits, and that closed loop, really trying to open up that loop. And so I've had the benefit and fortune of working with on a number of pipeline programs. One, we're working for the second year this year with MIT. It's called the Real Estate Executive Exchange Program. It's with a group that I'm part of, the Real Estate Executive Council, a national group of commercial real estate professionals of color that are really dedicated to a number of things about increasing the prominence and influence of professionals of color. But really, this program that we're working on at MIT is one part high school immersion or college immersion and one part career immersion. Last year it was in person. This year it is obviously virtual. And so that's been an exciting and rewarding to help mentor and guide students of color into this industry. doing similar programs with respect to college internships here in the greater Boston area with a program called CREST. And also in doing some work with the Partnership Inc., which is a professional organization here in Boston that I have had the benefit of going through two cohorts with them as a professional, both in my early stage career and also as the next generation executive. And I'm part of an executive council there of D&I professionals that are really sharing best practices at a corporate level and how and what the challenges are of really changing the narrative in celebrating some of the successes that we're having in Massachusetts. I think another way that that I'm trying to, I hope to be, successful in is really building a pipeline of opportunity. I think two of the projects that I'm working on right now are specifically related to capital raising and capital allocation. And from one standpoint, it's opening a door of opportunity to the investments in commercial real estate for accredited investors. While that's fine and good, and I think that's important, and I think I'm excited to continue to do that, what I'm more interested in doing is coupling that with building financial acumen along the spectrum. So for those that maybe are not accredited investors, for those that are looking to invest in commercial real estate or just be part of the ecosystem, that requires mentorship, tools, collaboration with a number of pipeline and technical assistance partners that are already doing that work. And so that's really, if I paint the picture of the next 5 years, that's what I hope to kind of build.
Good. So kind of in that response, you kind of hit on the themes of three questions that popped in from people that are viewing us. So the first is, in that world of investment, your thoughts on opportunity zone funds. If you've been familiar with those or connected with those in the world of commercial real estate, how do you see their impact? What are your thoughts on the concept of those funds?
I think on the concept of the funds, I think in the course of raising capital for investment in commercial real estate, one of the biggest challenges in raising capital in any environment, let alone kind of the COVID environment that we're living in, is an understanding of what the opportunity is and how a great real estate deal will always be a great real estate deal, right? The opportunity zone, I think one thing that is that I've learned from other peers and professionals that are doing work in the opportunity zone field is that you still need to have great opportunities and transactions. Simply, creating an area as an opportunity zone doesn't automatically make it an attractive opportunity. I think where it can have real benefit and work is if the sites and real estate opportunities are identified. And so it's a lot easier to raise capital and raise interest around projects that are clear and crystal. It's a lot more difficult to raise a blind fund, opportunity zone fund, and I think that's been part of a lot of the perhaps the negative feedback from those opportunity zone funds. It's challenging to kind of raise blind funds, not knowing where they're going to be allocated, but also particularly as we layer on the COVID world of the essence of investing in commercial real estate is understanding value. And you could read 100 white papers today about how to value in commercial real estate, but you layer on the market conditions that we're going through, it's hard to really know for certain where that value is going to be next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So my work's not dedicated to that, but I certainly pay attention to that.
So another question that came in is as you were talking about who you were and your identity as a biracial man and doing diversity and inclusion work. The question is, in your work, as our country grapples with a brutal scene of systemic racism that has been out there, have you faced systemic racism or systemic obstacles in your work, or if it's more comfortable, have you seen those obstacles in other areas as well, and the experiences of others and with those that you work with?
So I think one thing I've learned as a biracial person over time is that there is, the concept of privilege. And I would say, given the complexion of my skin during the course of my life, I am well aware that I have benefited from more of the white privilege than the black disadvantage in my life. My mother did not have to have a conversation with me about, what to do when I, drive around with my friends in the car. And I think that is something that when I was a youth, I did not really contemplate and realize. It's not really once you get to high school and college where I started to have those internal dialogues about, okay, well, what am I? Because I was confronted with questions, particularly when I went to Dartmouth. So are you black or are you white? And it kind of took my breath away to hear some of those questions and pause, because I'd never faced those questions. But the more I thought about it, I was like, you're trying to ask me, like, do I love my father or my mother more, right? And so it's just, and what I've realized over time as I've matured and grown is I don't have to answer that question. I don't have to pick a side. And I try to bring myself to every situation and embrace being who I am, but fully aware of the privilege that I have. When I walk into a room that is mostly black, it's very different than when I walk into a room that's mostly white. Sure. And I think even before the last 5 years of heightened kind of racial tension in the United States, as a biracial person, you're always internally torn, right? I mean, that's just you're always grappling with questions of identity, and when you have racial tensions, that are external to you, then having to unpack those is difficult. No question. I think the last week I've had some really great dialogues with my sisters about, and just some of the heartache, that we see in the world. But I think the way forward, I think one of the key things that I've learned is really to try to, lean on and educate the white majority. And as I put, that hat on and think about, being okay not having all the answers, right? But really, how do you live those questions, those tough questions, in a way that you eventually will find those answers, right?
I thank you for sharing that experience. One of the things that we talked about this morning at St. John's is, even with our closing convocation, is how do we move to the next step of being, and not just celebrating diversity and honoring diversity, but moving to that next step of being an active anti-racist organization in the midst of who we are and what we do, and really focusing on that privilege, because we have been supported by that privilege, and we need to be cognizant of that moving forward. So I appreciate your comments on that. A couple of questions have come in, Taidgh, about, if you look at the reality today of COVID-19 and what's going on in the world, as a young person who may have wanted to go into real estate development, and thoughts on how to be innovative in that world, given that there's going to be some challenges in real estate development with the disruption of COVID-19, and what are your thoughts on looking at different real estate development firms of how to differentiate themselves through technology, as an example, given the challenges that are out there with COVID-19 and remote working and firms moving away from physical office space in different areas?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think from my seat, there's a few things that I would advise those young professionals and young students who are thinking about a career in real estate is to really think about what will be kind of front and center. And obviously what is increased in awareness today with COVID is health, right? The health of a building and the health of indoor environments has increased tenfold. And so similar to the green sustainable movement that has been really growing over the last, say, 20 years, and really the last 10 years has taken off and is a critical part of any due diligence, when an investor looks at real estate. I think there are a number of white papers and great, thought leaders that are talking about, how to put a lens of health, right? So if there are students that are interested in healthcare and well-being, that I see as absolutely a future trend, not just in real estate, but every company. I think with respect to remote working and back to work, there's a lot of unknown unknowns, frankly, on that front. I have heard some stories about companies not going back until 2021. And then I hear, from global heads of real estate, a tech titan just 4 weeks ago saying that, their 15 million square foot, U.S. portfolio, they don't see shrinking. They just see the growth slowing. And, there's been a real trend in particularly the office side of commercial real estate to densify spaces, right? Pack a room that was normally for 10 people, you put, 15, maybe even 20 if you're aggressive. That obviously is changing, right? And you read those articles all the time. So I think that will really be a balance. There's certainly a quality of life from sitting from your screen porch and being able to do work. That has increased productivity tenfold. But there's something that we can't do, right, when we're face to face, that you just can't do on Zoom or go to meeting. You really need that in-person interaction. Or if your business is more technical and engineering based, you need to be in person. You need the built environment for that. So I think for paying attention to just business and economic trends of which models are working and which models maybe are not going to survive post-COVID. I think we're seeing a lot of small businesses figure out, that we're really relying on in-person interaction, having to pivot. And the ones that had already pivoted and built a hybrid, business, just looking at the retail sector, the retailers that have a hybrid e-commerce and in-person business model, they're surviving, right? And they will survive, this. And so I think the big question is which assets from a real estate standpoint how will they change? How will a hotel, pivot and innovate the way that people feel safe and comfortable going back to live or work or stay? But it's a great question. I frankly, I don't know all the answers, but that would be my response.
There are a few real estate development people who ask the question, so I think they're trying to tap your wisdom for their own business. But we'll see what happens. As you look at your work, Taidgh, a question kind of came in of looking at you're in the commercial real estate world. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts is facing significant challenges with regard to affordable housing. Do you see kind of some of the work you're doing playing into that work at all, and kind of providing for a safety valve for affordable housing?
Yeah, and I think certainly when you talk about traditionally social impact and impact investing, traditionally that has been very much affordable housing and housing in general has come hand in hand. My background has not been on the housing side, and so I'm really trying to learn fast and dig deep into that in that world, because in my mind, I really see an opportunity to not just help build, inclusive economies and economic development regions, but in order to do that, you need to look at not just housing, but small business enterprise, retail, office, really, inclusive neighborhoods, right? Thinking about what are the key economic drivers, and so that's. While housing is not the focus, it certainly has been a focus on some of the clients that I'm working with. And so one of the global real estate developers is working on kind of a master plan of a redevelopment that cuts across multiple asset classes. And in one way that certainly you can make impact from a diversity and inclusion and equity front is through affordable housing, not just truly affordable, but also mixed income and middle income and workforce housing. And so I think that's, when I look at the Commonwealth, that's where I believe there is opportunity and gap in that side of the spectrum.
We're right at 3:30, but if you have a couple more minutes, I got a few more questions. Things are popping in. One is a really easy one for you to answer, but could get you into trouble, and only one of two people could be asking this question. So it's how much of your professional success in life do you credit to your co-best men and 93 classmates, Dan and Tom? You don't have to answer that, but I wanted them to know that I saw the question and put it out there for you.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
And also, Ray Carey is out there listening to us, and he thanks you for all the work that you've done to help advance diversity at St. John's Prep, inclusion at St. John's Prep, as well as the larger world. If you there's a number of current prep alums that are listening to this. Yep. There's a number of prep alums who recently graduated from college. Can you think of any wisdom that you'd like to share with them? And for those looking into college, what would you recommend for courses to take in college to be successful in the world of commercial real estate?
That's a great question. First of all, to Danny and Tom, absolutely critical pieces of what's made Taidgh McClory. They keep me humble, right? So they remind me of the humility core value at St. John's. So thank you both, my brothers, for that. In terms of coursework, I mean, I am a big advocate of really, letting. It's not really. I don't think there's a one size fits all answer to this. Particularly in commercial real estate. I mean, there are a number of different avenues to go down. So when I think of aligning coursework to career path in real estate, you have kind of a marketing and advertising side of a lane, which, I mean, certainly creative thinking, design thinking, marketing and advertising courses, those certainly play into that. You have a financial analyst and asset management lane. So certainly, core economics, finance courses are going to be critical, for that. You also have more technical, design and construction lane. And so that's, I would put in the engineering category, right? In the science and in the STEM. And then there's also the accounting lane, property management accounting, asset management of portfolios. That's more, in that accounting bucket. So, I answer the question of that I wouldn't worry too much about what you're taking, as long as you are following, your core ethos of what drives you, right? I mean, you may think today, if there's a student out there thinking about, well, commercial real estate really, seems exciting. Well, I would ask, well, why is it exciting to you? What is it about commercial real estate that excites you? And that is really what I think has driven me. And it's really not about the knowledge that you're acquiring. I think what I've found is the benefit. Early on in my career, I was always seeking knowledge, trying to seek answers. If I take this course, everything will be perfect. I'll have the answers, and I'll have the knowledge. But what I've learned is I can accumulate knowledge, but if I'm not applying it, then it's not valuable to me. Right? And so I would only, be curious, like Brother Arcadius, would always say, and it's like, what are you, you're going to come in and just absorb knowledge, be a sponge. I think that's the essence of, every time I walk through the library, that was a great reminder of,
Sure.
of why you're there. And you're not just, absorbing it to accumulate it or collect it, but you've got to apply it. And sometimes it's just living those questions, and it'll lead to more questions that'll hopefully you'll kind of live into those answers eventually. So
thanks. So your closing question comes from another fellow Lynn, native of the city of Lynn. If you could build one masterpiece project for the city of Lynn, what would it be and why?
Oh my, oh my. One masterpiece project for the city of Lynn. I mean, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think, the core of downtown Lynn has amazing bones. And, I think to me right now, what it lacks is key drivers, destination drivers that give me a reason, right, to kind of go back. You know, I have a reason because it's a soft spot in my heart. My roots are from Lynn, and so I don't need a reason to kind of go back to visit. But I'd love to have more reasons, you know, to go back. And so in my mind, what that looks like is destination, you know, retail, mixed use, kind of, you know, really energizing the urban core. And I think of Central Square, you know, I think of the opportunity to really make that more pedestrian friendly, more biking friendly. There's plenty of roads in Lynn. I think that you know, that could be pretty magical. You know, the waterfront is certainly a big opportunity, a generational opportunity for Lynn. And I think we're seeing some progress in terms of unlocking that. But I truly think that if there was you know, more destination, you know, experiential opportunities, and that's, I say that kind of part of my pre-COVID brain on, realizing that experiential, you know, real estate is a new world. It's a big puzzle. That's it. It's a great question. Hopefully,
maybe somebody who's listening has been inspired by what you've shared, and they'll come up with that new masterpiece and work with the City of Lynn to get that happening. Taidgh, thanks for your time. I really appreciate all that you do for St. John's and your continued connection with us, the way you mentor a lot of our young alums, your connection with our alumni board, your service on the board of trustees. We're really grateful for all that you do and all that you are doing in the world of diversity and inclusion, in the world of real estate development, and helping us with that as well. And thanks for your time this afternoon. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Have a great rest of the day. Let's go enjoy some beautiful weather. Thanks, everybody. Take care, Taidgh.
Take care.